Hello, welcome to another STEM story. So today we're talking to Beth Barnes, who's got a few twists and turns to tell us about, but is currently an assistant professor in civil engineering at Durham University. Beautiful, beautiful place to study. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Beth.
Yes, thank you for having me, and definitely agree that Durham is definitely a beautiful city to be in.
Yeah, I paid a visit there and went around. I'm pretty sure it's on the university buildings, and it was wasn't it part of the Harry Potter scenery?
Yes, yeah,
Good. I don't always trust my memory. I'm like, is this true or have I dreamt this?
yeah, no, yeah. Part of the cathedral was used
Yeah.
in. It's like I think it's when he's like running down some of the corridors because it's like the cloisters, so the big archways within the cathedral are used within the Harry Potter filming.
It's beautiful. Love it. Can you tell us about your role in civil engineering? What does that mean for? I mean, I've not heard masses about it, so I don't think I could tell you what it means.
Yeah, well, for me, civil engineering is anything that helps civilization. So anything that is providing support to humans and how we kind of live and work and enjoy planet Earth. So whether that's the transport that you take, the water you drink, how we get rid of your wastewater, bridges, structures, houses, um, being sustainable. Civil engineering is all encompassing, and so for me, it's anything that supports civilization and kind of helps us grow and thrive on planet Earth, whilst hopefully leaving it in a better place for those that are, those future generations.
Yeah. Don't really think about how much. I think probably the biggest jump in my understanding of civil engineering was buying a home, and you have the property surveyed, and they're talking about. I'm thinking like the walls and the electricity, and they're talking about subsidence underneath and all of the plumbing, and I'm like, didn't even know these things were there. How much effort goes into providing the facilities for one family home?
Yeah, a huge amount of effort goes into providing those facilities. You'll have had engineers providing the water system that brings water to your house. You'll have had someone assessing the ground and deciding what foundations to put in. Then you'll have had someone designing the actual structure and making sure that kind of like the mechanics and the mathematics of it mean that that structure is going to stand up and be susceptible, not susceptible to the weather and the elements that it would be put under. And then kind of making sure it's connected to the transport network, and you can get to a supermarket, you can get to leisure facilities. All of that is done by civil engineers.
Yeah. And then, I mean, we don't really pay attention to how much has happened before we get here, but as soon as there's something missing, I'm sure people are quite happy to say, there's no Wi-Fi signal in this part of town. What's happened here? Well, those masts that you didn't like.
Yeah, yeah, those wind turbines you didn't want putting up to provide you with power. Yeah, well, now we're a bit short on power.
Oh dear. I could trigger myself down a rant, so I probably should not not talk about these things. How did you get into civil engineering?
So I always term myself as an accidental civil engineer. Like it wasn't, I'd love to say that I knew from a young age I'd definitely be a civil engineer. Like I did have a weird obsession with my dad's cement mixer when I was like 2, 3 years old. There are so many pictures of me in a builder's hat with the cement mixer, mixing whatever I could put in the cement mixer.
Oh,
Um, but then it just so happened that for my A levels, I took maths, chemistry, and physics. And I started going to like a lot of open days, reading prospectuses. And I was just like, I don't know what I want to do. I think I want to do kind of like a straight chemistry degree or maybe something like forensic science. And then I used to go to open days. He was my partner at the time, he's now my husband. We used to go together. And one day we were sat at Edinburgh and he said, oh, I want to go to the civil engineering talk. And I was like, oh, I don't have anything to do. I'll come with you. And I kind of just had my eureka moment. And I was like, oh, this combines my love of maths and physics and chemistry in a really hands-on way.
hmm.
And it's given me this opportunity to change the world for the better. I knew that I couldn't be a doctor. I wasn't interested in medicine and I wanted to save people in my own way. And like engineering allows you to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a pure accident. It wasn't for told that this is the path I would take. But it was a very happy accident that happened.
Yeah. Well, good job we didn't have anything better to do that day.
I know.
That's brilliant. And this, I think this is the thing. This is kind of why I wanted to have these conversations. There's so many jobs that I've never even heard of. But then as soon as I hear of them, I don't actually know what they entail. And I've been in STEM for at least 20 years. So there's going to be for people that are making decisions about future studies and future career, there's not only are there endless opportunities and options, they don't even know what half of them are.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know what civil engineering was.
Yeah, I think there's still types of engineering I don't truly understand, and I hear new terms all the time, and I'm kind of like, oh, is that gone in a different direction, or is it an entirely new role? So, I think that's the beauty of STEM is that it's ever evolving, and as we find new technologies and new techniques, there will always be new roles coming out in STEM.
Yeah. You mentioned that you use your kind of all of your maths, chemistry, and physics in what you do now. That's quite an interesting thing for students, I think, to see how what there is in their textbook actually applies to the rest of the world. Could you share some examples of how you use that?
Yeah, I mean, so both within the physics and the maths, we did mechanics at A level. And I now teach our first year students mechanics of engineering. So we do mechanics of static systems, so systems that aren't moving. Um, and that is based on the basic principles of mechanics that you learn, Newton's laws. And yeah, it's just fantastic to kind of see your maths applied to a problem. So we do a series of 18 lectures in first year, and they're all basic mechanics techniques. And then at the end, we spend 2 lectures and we design a structure together. It's obviously very simplistic in first year, but the kind of eureka moments you can see your students having as they kind of see it slot into place and go, oh, wow, this principle um, of mechanics, I can actually now put it into a design problem. And now I have a structure that would stand up and could be built,
Yeah.
um, which is fantastic.
That is really powerful because I mean the large majority of what I teach is GCSE maths, and there's all of these problems that you probably remember where there's bags of different coloured beads, or somebody's buying 30 apples and 12 bananas, and it's like, who's doing this? This is nonsense. To be able to actually apply this to something real that's going to exist in the physical world, that must be very, very motivating.
Yeah, I mean, the likes of trigonometry and SOHCAHTOA, like though, even when I'm teaching the third and fourth year students of their engineering degrees, I'm still like, do you remember that trigonometry you learned when you were kind of 12 onwards? We're still going to use it because this is still the basic principle that we're building on. Triangles are the strongest shapes.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of trigonometry, a lot of SOHCAHTOA involved. So yeah, it's wonderful to be able to see maths applied to a problem.
Yeah. Brilliant. So it is useful stuff.
Yes.
Wonderful. Um, so do you think there's anything that kind of would uh give an indication of whether this job would be something for someone to pursue? So if we're talking to 14, 16-year-olds at the moment who are doing GCSEs and preparing for A levels, what kind of interests would match up to your role?
So I think you would tend to be someone that likes to problem solve.
Yeah.
So you want to apply your learning to a problem and come up with a solution. You are probably very interested in the world, and that might come about in different aspects. So you might be interested in kind of sustainability and how we can do things better and greener, but actually you might just be really interested in like how things work. And I don't know, you might drive your parents mad by taking things to pieces and then trying to put them back together, or starting to tinker with cars and things like that. um, Civil engineering branches off in lots of different directions, whether that's transport or water or geotechnics, which is to do with the ground, environmental engineering. So you might start to kind of have an interest in geology, so rocks. You might quite like being outdoors. But having said that, there's a lot of engineers that work inside an office and never do a site visit. We do a lot of things virtually now.
Yeah.
So if you're not an outdoorsy person, that doesn't matter either.
Yeah.
But equally, if you're looking in the future for a role that'll be different every day, then I would highly recommend engineering. No 2 days are ever the same.
Mm.
And you will be thinking on your feet and applying your knowledge to problems.
Mm. Yeah, I think you just described my brother there. He used to be constant. From the very first time he had a screwdriver in his hand, that everything in the house was being demolished.
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
and just from a university perspective as well, like we like to hear about those things. Like we love to know what interests you. When you start to write those personal statements, and if you think of applying for an apprenticeship or for a university degree, those are the things that really sell you. Like, what are your interests? What's unique about you? Why would we want you to be one of our students?
Yeah. They are actually interested. It's very much worthwhile writing these personal statements. I
Yeah.
can barely remember writing mine, except for the fact that I didn't enjoy it. But yeah, there is somebody reading it.
Yes, yeah, there is sometimes a person, sometimes a team of them.
Hmm.
I know for sure mine started with the comment about being obsessed with the cement mixer. That was my unique selling point. By the way, I really love cement mixers. I've loved them since I was like 3 years old.
I'd love to think that you just turn up for the first week at university and someone's provided a cement mixer.
Yeah.
Maybe not that much attention to detail, but yeah. Is there anything that you think you might do differently if you went back through all of that journey again?
Um, Probably. There's probably loads of things I would do differently. I mean, for example, I actually didn't start off doing maths, chemistry, and physics as my A levels.
Yeah.
I actually started off doing maths, chemistry, French, art, and history,
Oh wow.
and decided 6 weeks in that I wasn't sure where this was going to lead. The history wasn't the period of history I was particularly interested in, and I begged to be able to switch, and they were like, "Well, one of the only places there's room is physics," and I was like, "Okay, I'll do that. That sounds vaguely interesting, and matches up a bit better with my maths and chemistry." I stuck the French out. I probably shouldn't have bothered. It was for me, my brain didn't have the capacity for all of the STEM learning and then trying to compete with learning a new language still. Like I love French, I love learning a language, but it was at A level, it was just too much. So I probably should have just dropped the French as well because I only scraped a pass in it. Um, and didn't take it as a full A level. I ended up dropping it at AS. So I mean, I think part of it is not being afraid of failure and to make changes. Things might have been very different if I'd stuck with the art and history, or I might still be sat here as a civil engineer. I will never know. Um, but yeah, don't not being afraid of making changes, of knowing for yourself what you're worth and whether a job suits you. When I worked in industry, I'm not afraid to say I had 3 jobs in 3 years because I couldn't see myself developing. I wasn't getting the skills I needed. And I used my initiative to find myself a new role. And, I think that's something we'll see more and more. And actually, instead of it being a negative, we should celebrate people recognizing what they need for their own personal development. I
Yeah,
think that's a good thing.
definitely. And it's a bit different for me now because I'm self-employed, so without changing jobs, I can completely change environments. But
Yeah.
certainly when I was employed, I couldn't do the exact same thing in the exact same place for more than a couple of years without it being boring. Doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean leaving the company, but trying something new within the company definitely made a difference.
Yeah. And I mean, it's taken me a long time to get to where I am now. I chose to go into industry and work as a civil engineer. Spent time in a design office, spent time on a construction site. Still didn't really feel like it was the right fit for me, so made the decision to go back to university. So after I'd done 3, 4 years in industry, I went back and did a PhD, which is quite unusual to kind of totally flip. Most people are chasing more money, not halving the salary. But I just didn't feel like I had the right fit. And actually, what I was really interested in was research and kind of changing the world through that and through education. So I did a PhD, took me 4 years. finished it in a pandemic, which is far from ideal. And then, academia is filled with a lot of temporary contracts. So I took a temporary contract to start off with, which has then allowed me to leapfrog to where I am now, doing the dream job, which is allowing me to teach, which is allowing me to research, and spend time doing outreach and things like this.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually. I mean, I know potentially for students listening, that's a long way down the journey from where they are currently, but it's one that I've often wondered about, the journey into back into academia, like university academia. Um, Presumably PhD is a requirement to be able to be in your role. Is that right?
Um, Pretty much. There are instances where you would have enough industrial experience that you would come in,
Hmm.
maybe 20 years into your industrial career, but
Yeah.
you would often do it like part-time on the side. You would come and teach for us a couple of days a week.
Mm.
And then you would probably still keep your industrial role on a part-time basis as well. So yeah, pretty much a PhD is essential to
Mm.
come and teach at university level.
Yeah. And then the research element of it, I mean, that sounds amazing. That sounds
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So it's nice that you can do kind of like small experiments, see if things work before you decide if you're going to kind of take it into a full project. So my research is all about human behavior and how we react in emergency scenarios, particularly kind of like natural hazards, so storms, flooding, and I make computational models of that human behavior to kind of see how we interact in the city environment.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, it's as a civil engineer, that's not necessarily a job that you would associate with a civil engineer, but actually it's really important as a civil engineer to understand how humans are going to interact with the thing that you're making or building or putting in place,
mm,
because they can really fundamentally change how something's used or interacted with. And like we see it all the time. So, you see new developments and then you'll put pathways in, you'll put hard paths in, you'll expect everyone to walk along them. But as humans, we're always looking for the quickest route.
yeah.
And that's when you then get the preferential or like worn away pathways. You see them all the time, they cut across. And
Yeah.
actually, as engineers, that's what we should work out from the offset. Right, how are humans going to cut across this area? What is the shortest way? Right, that's the path we should put in.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I could frequently see this when it's like a beautiful path, paved, lined, and then dead patch of grass where everyone's cut across. Although it blew my mind the other day watching the cat walk across the garden, and he walked the long way round to be able to use the path. Like, you're a cat. What are you doing?
maybe civil engineers just designed for cats. We provide the longest route possible to meander to kind of show
Okay.
off our prowess.
Potential research project bit.
Yeah.
Oh, who knows? Yeah, that sounds really interesting, thinking about human behavior, and especially in disaster scenarios, because it's very difficult to plan for, like as we have seen. We're not
Yes.
necessarily always prepared for things going completely pear-shaped, and yet we fully expect the people that manage our cities to have provided for us. Yeah, how do you even begin? That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, they are quite limited in the tools that are available to them,
Hmm.
and often they're relying on what are termed as real life simulations. So, you'll have seen them in the news, like where the Met have simulated a terrorist attack to kind of see what happens, and that's testing the blue light response. So, how will the emergency professionals deal with that? And at best, they'll have had some dummies or some actors come in and you'll be told you're going to have a head wound, you're going to have broken your leg, you're trapped here. But we don't actually know what the true human response would be because we've still engineered that scenario. We've still said, you're going to do this, you're going to be 100% compliant, you're going to follow all the rules. Whereas actually, by creating the computational tools, by putting it into a simulation, we can try lots of different rules. We can try people not following the rules. We can simulate panic, and there's much less cost involved with that, and time. We can press a button and run a simulation, rather than setting something up and having to see it play out over like 12 hours in a day.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, I just enjoy playing with that simulation and seeing what happens when people start panicking.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen for myself. I mean, I don't want to start triggering any trauma with people, so I'm not going to describe any situations. But whenever I've been in a situation that caused me to head towards panic and fear, my behaviors were nowhere near what I expected. It's not
yeah,
prepared at all. Yeah,
yeah.
that must be really interesting. Anyway, I don't want to be getting all dark, but I'd love to be playing with these research toys. They sound so cool. I imagine it's not about, when I say research toys, potentially diminishing what's taken a significant amount of effort from you to create.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Most of those came out of a 4-year PhD, so a lot of effort and time in those 4 years. And now, I kind of spend my time applying for new pots of money to be able to carry on that research.
Yeah.
That's a large part of my job as well. To get the money and then to find people like what we call postdocs, so people who've done a PhD and want to start doing some research.
Mm.
They will often come and work on your research project for a year or two, and then they'll go and do something else or decide they want to get an assistant professor role.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's about a lot of civil engineering is about managing people as well. If that's the route you choose to take, you can either kind of become technical,
Yeah.
or you might delve more into the people management side of it.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, it all sounds really interesting to me. I'm in the danger zone here with these podcast conversations. Like, oh, that sounds fun. I want to learn more about this. We have a job, Georgina. When you're at school, you mentioned your A levels. I mean, you signed up for a lot of A levels.
Yes. Um,
Was this like these were you had several favorites, or did you have a kind of future position in mind?
um, so part of the issue was I was at a grammar school, a sixth form attached to a grammar school.
Mm.
So there was a really heavy push on the number of A levels we had to do. So by choice, I never would have started off doing five. Five is too many A levels,
Yeah.
for the majority of people. And it's just not sustainable with being a teenager and having a life and getting some balance. It's just not appropriate. So I would never have chosen to do five had it not been pushed on us.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, they were the subjects. Weirdly, at GCSE, they were my least best subjects, but the ones I enjoyed the most. So I didn't choose everything. I was around when it was A stars. That was the top grade. So everything I got an A star in, I chose not to do at A level, and everything I got an A in, I did at A level. Um, I It's just a very stubborn, determined 16-year-old that was like, I really like these things. I'm going to do them. Um, and obviously, I didn't have a plan in place because I'm an accidental civil engineer. I just kind of thought, I like these things. They'll probably lead somewhere. They're a
Yeah.
good mix. And then obviously switch more into the STEM field when I kind of panicked. I did panic 6 weeks in, thinking, oh, I'm not sure my art and my history will lead me anywhere. And
Mm.
I think I was probably wrong with that. But
Yeah.
that's what 16-year-olds do. We make rash decisions. And it worked out in the end.
It's fair enough. I mean, there's not an awful lot to base that decision on at that point. It's a very difficult one to do. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen. I think the best way to make the decision is what you enjoy. So I did similar. I did biology, chemistry, and French A levels, and zero clue what that was going to give me, but quite enjoyed them.
Yeah.
It works. I've never done French again. I cannot speak French, but I enjoyed studying French A level. It's a bit more about culture and literature,
Mm.
and less about the language. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you're enjoying yourself, why not? I love it. Um, did you ever yourself work with a tutor? Obviously, that's my area of interest. I'm just curious to hear people's experiences.
Yeah, I did. I really struggled with the chemistry A level. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy it. There was just elements of it that I just really struggled with. So I was lucky enough that my parents managed to get me a tutor. It just so happened she was French, but she tutored in chemistry. So she was like, it was very helpful because I was also doing my French. So I
Yeah.
could just be like, can you just look at this little bit of French? Even though that's not what my parents are paying you for. Would you just look at this little bit of French for me? Um, and she did really help. Like without her, I don't think I would have got through my chemistry A level. She was really instrumental in more than anything giving me the confidence.
Mm.
Um, I did A levels when you could retake exams.
Mm.
So there was one where and I did it in maths as well, where I panicked. It was like I opened the paper, I saw the first couple of questions, they were different to usual, and not what I was expecting. And then I just lost it. I just lost the headspace to be in the exam, to find the questions that I could answer and build my confidence back up again. So I did it in chemistry and I did it in maths, and I had to resit them because I didn't get the grades that I needed. So she was really instrumental in giving me that confidence back, and just, go and find a question you can do.
Mm.
Start with that. It doesn't matter if it's the last question on the paper. Go and find one you can do first.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. This is a pretty common experience. I think I remember doing my GCSEs and never really having sat an exam before. You don't really know what to expect. And then that experience of anxiety, if you've never experienced that before, you don't really know what happens. And it just feels like you might be unwell and not doing very well at this exam. But it's
Mhm.
it's completely manageable if you're prepared for it. If
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
happens to you.
yeah, yeah. I'd flown through my GCSEs. My
Yeah.
GCSEs in comparison were an absolute breeze. And
Mm.
then I got to A levels, and I think the short, sharp modules just don't really suit my learning style. I need that little bit longer to like consolidate my knowledge, to practice.
Mm.
So it wasn't compatible with me. And it didn't matter how much I practiced, I just was never ready for the exam. But then having the tutor, she just, kind of give me that boost and that confidence
Mm.
to get through the exams. And like you say, to deal with that anxiety when you've never really come across it before.
Yeah. Wonderful. And it paid off because now here you are
Yeah.
helping other people to become civil engineers and change the world as well.
Yes, I hope so.
Wonderful. And that, thank you very much, Beth. I had no idea what's involved in civil engineering, but it sounds like a brilliant role, and like your particular role there to balance academia and research. That's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, it's very exciting space to be in.
Yeah.
I hope that a couple of people listening to this might think, do you know what? Actually, civil engineering is that really nice mix of
Yeah.
vocational skills alongside the kind of knowledge I've got from my GCSEs and A levels.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you so much for having me.
you mentioned as well that you're involved with the Women's Engineering Society's promotion. So I'm going to share the links with wherever people are listening to us, so
Yep,
people can go and have a look about more about what you do there. Thank you
yep,
very much.
brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm your podcast host, Georgina Green, and the founder of Green Tutors, STEM Specialist Tuition Company. We've been supporting students with their GCSE and A-level maths, science and STEM subject studies since 2011, and our team all work and have a passion for STEM professions such as engineering and chemical synthesis and medicines and all sorts of fantastic things in the world of STEM beyond the curriculum, which is what we bring into our lessons to make them more exciting. And the reason I wanted to share this podcast with you all. Alongside that, we've launched the STEM Educators Academy, where other STEM professionals and STEM education enthusiasts can come and learn about how to grow their STEM education practices together. If you're interested in any of the support that we offer, get in touch at greentutors.uk and you can access some of the free resources on there as well. This podcast would not exist without the sponsorship of STEMazing. I'm very grateful to STEMazing, not only for sponsoring our podcast, but for the brilliant work that they're doing, fostering inspiration and inclusion in STEM. I recommend having a look at their website, stemazing.co.uk, which is what you can see right now, to see a bit more about the work that they do. Alongside the award-winning Inspiration Academy, bringing events into primary schools and inspiring young people to see their future in STEM, because you can't be what you can't see. There's a fantastic membership, which I'm a part of, for women in STEM to do more of this, fostering inspiration and inclusion in STEM, with monthly content shared on empowerment, inspiration, and community. That will help you to be a better role model and mentor to people in STEM. And finally, there's a brilliant library here of role models in STEM that you can go and have a look at and hear more about their STEM stories. Here's a shout out for our sponsor, Navigated Tutor. If you haven't seen this, I recommend having a look if you're in education. The Navigated Tutor platform gives access to a quarterly webinar and magazine and training resources. The first one I've already read and attended, and in minutes learned lots that's going to make a massive impact on the way that I support my students. This is brought to you by Arthur Moore, who is not only a fantastic tutor but also the host of the Tea and Teaching podcast and Tutoring Tips podcast, two of my most listened podcasts. So I recommend that you go and check those out if you're working in education at all, and sign yourself up to the Navigated Tutor platform for some fantastic CPD. You can get access to this at mooreedu.thinkific.com. That's mooreedu.thinkific.com.